Hi, hello. So this is actually the second time I tried to film this video. It's always weird when YouTubers say that, but I just wanted you to know that if the energy is low, it's because normally I record this video in the morning, and I've had a crazy work day and a crazy family day, and so it is now 7 p.m. No, 8 p.m. Which is way later than I would normally start recording one of these videos. Normally this is on YouTube at 5, so I'm starting at 8. I have got the tablet here because I've been told that the website version of The Wandering Inn is the best, most superior way to read it by the community. And so I'm going to take their advice because they know it a lot better than me. Today we're going to be reading, I want to say 5 chapters. And I'm going to be giving my reaction in between each single chapter. If we're able to do, you know what, we're going to do 5. I'm not going to say if we can't do 5 because we're going to do 5. I'm going to stop this clip now. I'm going to start reading, and I will see you guys in however many minutes. Oh, by the way, Wandering Inn, episode 4. This is episode 4 now, I think. Thanks for tuning in. If you're a Wandering Inn fan, great to have you back, and I will speak to you after I've done some reading. Right, chapter 10 done. So, in not 10, 11. So we're still on the rewrite of book 1, chapter 11. So in chapter 11, Erin goes to Liscor, the city, for the first time, which is, she says it's like an hour away from the inn. And so I think the first thing that grabs me about this chapter is there's a lot of world building going on here. I don't know whether it was the same in the original version, but there seems to be a lot happening. And we're also being introduced to a couple of characters that seem like they're probably going to be important. So I think specifically in the background, you see this barmaid being fired. And obviously, Erin owns an inn, and inns need barmaids. So I would not be shocked if the barmaid ends up joining the crew. Let me just go. What was her name? Drassy. No, wait. No, it was Drassy. So Drassy's the name of the barmaid who gets fired in front of Erin, and she's like, "Oh, this is just like home, just like America." So that was fun. I enjoyed that kind of like situation that she gets herself into, and she also meets like a hyena guy who's got half a deer, and then she meets the receptionist at the Adventurers Guild, who's called Celis. All of these characters feel like they might not be being introduced because they're like going to be important, but I feel like they will come back because we spend too much time with them. I feel like for them not to. I could be wrong, and I love to make a stupid prediction. So sorry, I just got some sparkling water. It's like my favourite thing at the moment is this Liquid Death sparkling water. Anyway, so there's a lot of interesting things going on here. You learn a little bit about the Adventurers Guild, which is cool. So that's taking contracts and things like that. And then you also you meet a few new races. So there's like the hyena people. There's like families with children in the city, which is cool. You find out that the city's like massive, which is really good. It's nice to have this kind of having a city on the doorstep of the inn, which is where Erin, who's our POV character, lives. Lets her kind of join in with all the stuff that's happening there. So I think that's really interesting. And feels like is the kind of gateway for this to become an epic fantasy, which I know it kind of does later on. So that was really good, and I liked reading that. I like reading that chapter a lot. I think that's maybe not my favourite chapter yet, although maybe actually probably my favourite chapter so far in the whole. I mean, I'm only 11 chapters in, But I really enjoyed that one. More character interactions, much more characters, much more world building is all the kind of stuff that I'm looking for from as we go on. I feel like I know Erin well enough, and I've enjoyed the cozy in stuff. But what I would like added to that is this kind of world building. I like also all the people that keep saying that she smells, which is quite funny because obviously she's been in this world for like a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and she hasn't showered or washed, apart from that one time where she washed and almost got murdered by an evil fish. So, very funny, and just kind of fun. And it's interesting to see the like human persecution almost as well, especially from the Knolls who really don't like humans. So yeah, uh, great to have some kind of more character moments and stuff like that. So I'm going to go straight back into chapter 12, and I will see you guys after I've read it. So, chapter 12 done. So, in 12, so Erin gets shafted in the market, and I feel like we all saw that coming. Um, and it's quite funny that she gets completely shafted on these coins, and then afterwards is like, wait, why didn't I ask the two people who like know what's going on here, know and speak the language? Late night. So that was quite like that was quite funny. Um, and then obviously you have I say obviously, and then I think the other major kind of storyline moment from that is Relk like annoying Erin when like she already kind of doesn't like him because he wanted to kill Pisces, and she doesn't want she was like, I don't want you to just kill him. So she's kind of annoyed with Relk, and then she goes to see him and Clutch, and like Relk is like rinsing humans. He's just like going off on one about like, oh, you can't trust humans, blah blah blah, and and then like it's very much a, oh, he's right behind me, isn't he? Sort of like situation, and like one of the other drakes in the room is like, oh yeah, she came in ages ago, and that's quite funny. Um, and then he like follows her home, which is a bit like kind of not okay. Although it's interesting that she doesn't seem to like him, but she does kind of trust him because she doesn't like stop him from following her or anything like that. Um, and she eventually even lets him carry. Oh, after he saves her from some goblins, she lets him carry her bag back to the inn with all the food. So, on the plus side, she's got a lot more food so she can make back those gold coins that she accidentally spent. Um, I kind of had the feeling that like Relk was going to be like, oh, who did this? And then like the next day he was just going to turn up with two gold coins or something like that. Um, so that was quite like I was kind of expecting that. I think maybe we'll see where we come to in later chapters, but he does mention like no one would probably bear witness because you're a human. And humans, obviously, as we said in the previous chapter, are like pretty widely disliked. There's one other character that you meet, which is the other trader, Krisha. So that's interesting. She was like, she only has a couple of lines, but she had enough personality again that I feel like she might come back into it. Um, and then you get to the final bit, which is where Relk's like, "I'll deal with the goblins for you," after he scares them off, and he goes and kills the little goblin girl's parents, um, which you kind of find out about after the fact. Um, and interesting as well that like the when the little goblin girl comes back and like everyone finds out that her parents are dead, they act quite like caring and affectionate towards her, and like the goblin chieftain is sad. So there's probably possibly some relation there. I'm really interested to see what's going on with the goblins, and I want to read some more. And in fact, I'm going to read some more. So I said I was going to try and read 5 chapters. And I was like, no, I'm going to read 5 chapters, but it's taken me like an hour to read 2. So we'll see how we go. I'm going to keep going until I get tired. Wow, that chapter was a quick read. So just finished chapter 13, which has some cool artwork. So this is, I think, possibly supposed to be the young goblin girl. It's not wearing armor, so I don't know whether it's the. Pardon me. I don't know whether it's the chieftain. But if the chieftain's described as wearing armor, that's kind of not what I'm seeing from this. So really cool to get our first piece of artwork. But also, this chapter went super quickly. So Eren is like disgusted that Relk has killed the goblins, and like basically just kind of like screams and vomits and throws him out. Eventually, she decides to bury them, and then the little goblin comes on her as she's burying them, and it's quite an emotional chapter, honestly. And that's probably one of the reasons why it reads so quickly, is because you're drawn through. And then Erin, so that she kind of pushes away the goblin girl. She ends up like kicking her basically, and making it obvious that she can't kill her. And then she just kind of turns her back and lets her leave. So the next day, what happens is the goblin chieftain turns up, and he tries to kill her with a bow and arrow, and almost does. And then she turns around and she's like surrounded by the goblins, and there's like some goblin ceremonial hunt thing going on where they're trying to hunt her. Really cool chapter. The majority of the chapter is kind of like emotions and like scene setting and stuff like that. So it's not like previous ones. So there's not as many events to dissect. But I have to say, I was surprised with the reaction from Erin. It's a very real reaction that somebody would probably have in that situation. You kind of don't want somebody to kill things for you. Well, I mean, a normal person wouldn't. And like, so I was convinced, right? So my original thinking when Relk was like, "I'll deal with the goblins," and then the goblin girl got back to the lair an hour later, I was like, "Oh, she'll turn up and all the goblins will be dead, every single one, and it will just be the girl by herself, and Eren will take her in." That's kind of what I was expecting, because we've already seen that the girl is intelligent. It feels like from her reactions, the chieftain as well, feels like from their reactions to Eren's speech that they maybe understand what she's saying, or they, no, there's some sort of understanding going on there. We haven't had any goblin POVs since the death of the parent goblins. So I don't know yet what they know, if that makes sense, about the goblin parent death. So I thought Relk was just going to kill them all, and then Eren was going to adopt the girl goblin. Like, that was kind of what I was expecting. But it was a really good chapter. This set of chapters, I think I've said this every week, but I feel like that each set of chapters is better than the last one, and this set of chapters has been really good. So we've had, the town, we've had the whole kind of confrontation with Relk, then we've had the goblin attack, and now I'm going to go on to chapter 14 now. So I will speak to you guys in a minute. Wow, another insanely quick chapter. I think we're pretty much firmly out of the cozy fantasy territory now. This was like, it says at the end of the chapter that she's earned the bar fighting skill. This is a bar fight. This is it's pretty dark. I was not expecting her. Pardon me. I was not expecting Eren to kill the Goblin Chieftain at all. And I definitely wasn't expecting her to get stabbed. I mean, like, how are we going to deal with that? She's like an hour's walk outside of town. Um, Probably because we've already seen that the guardsmen carry potions. Maybe Klibich will come and check on her because Relks told her how upset she was. I think that probably something like that will happen. Um, wow, that was just like the writing on the bar fight was really good. Um, Writing action in fantasy is often really difficult because you don't have to just contend with conveying the action to the reader, but you also have to contend with the fantastical elements that you might have in your head that the reader might not. So, you might think, oh, well, this goblin has long fingers or whatever, and if you don't convey that to the audience, then your fight might not make sense. And this happens a lot, especially in the early sections of fantasy books where you might be before the big info dumps, for example. Um, you'll often see that action scenes make a little bit less sense. Like Brandon Sanderson, right? One of the best fantasy writers for action. And if you read the first book of the Stormlight Archive, Way of Kings, I found the fight scene in that with Seth even to be like really hard to follow. So yeah, I mean it's good to get some action from Pirate Arbor. So like proper one-on-one dirty bar fight action. Um, I'm going to go on and read my final chapter for the day. I would probably honestly have read more, but it's getting late to the point where I know this video is going to take me a little while to edit and render out. So, in order to make sure it comes to you on the day that I promised, even if it'll be about 5 or 6 hours late, I want to get on and read the final chapter, and then I'll give you guys kind of like a summary of this week's chapters, although I've kind of already given it earlier on when I said this is like the best set of chapters yet. But we'll talk in a minute. Chapter 15, here we come. Okay, that chapter was incredible as well. Um, Kilb is like, I think, probably my favourite character, and tons of foreshadowing about him. We've had some little hints that the Antinium aren't like super popular or well liked, but basically a whole chapter from his POV confirms all that stuff. The Drakes are like, they're like hesitant to touch him when he goes into the bar. He talks about how he used to be more powerful. He mentions he says in his ruined form. And I don't know what that means, but I'm excited to find out. He also talks about how like he used to be the best fighter in the guards, basically, and I assume the ruined form stuff has something to do with that and why he's not anymore. He fights Relk, like that's like a big deal. The next chapter is gonna definitely have some fallout from that, I'm sure. Um, and he also works out that Erin's not from the fantasy world, that she's from our world. Um, all in all, excellent, excellent, excellent chapter. I know I said before, oh, this has been the best chapter ever, so whatever. But like because Klib is, I think, definitively now the character I'm most interested in, if not my favorite, the one that I'm most interested to see more about. This chapter was just like a real easy win for me because I love the character. It's from his POV. We get so many more details. I like at the end as well. He mentions that he's got to speak to the Queen about Erin, and that's really cool. I like the idea that like he can't like he might want to keep a secret, for example, but because he's part of the hive, he almost doesn't have that opportunity. Really interesting. Um, there's also, I think, just kind of a lot of interesting stuff going on with Antinium, which I really want to learn more about. and he's talking about how, you know, his actions have reduced the opinion of Antinium. Yeah, there's just so much to. There's almost too much to glean from that in terms of things I am interested in, which is like specifically stuff about the kind of world building of that kind of the more interesting elements of the fantasy races, and like the fantasy kind of racial politics. Also, you get to see kind of him bonding with Erin, and she, you know, she even says like, oh, you know, she kind of wants to hug him. She mentions a few times that she feels like she wants to, but she also doesn't want to, which is obviously the kind of, you know, if you're in a situation that she's been in where she's, you know, just murdered somebody who was trying to rape and kill her, like, there's obviously something, you know, that's quite shocking. I kind of assumed, so I mean, like, going back a chapter or two, I assumed that, you know, when she was going to the kitchen to heat something up, I thought I thought this was going to be back to the cozy world. I thought she was going to be making some food, and that when the goblins like came in, she'd be like, "I've made all this food," and she would like befriend the goblins. Because I'm sure I have seen like "Don't kill the goblins" as like a catchphrase for wandering in, and now I know where that comes from. It's because she's killed the hobgoblin, the goblin chieftain. Um, so that's, you know, that she's like, oh, you know, I've done this. I didn't want to do this. No more goblins should die. Lots of good stuff in that chapter. Let's talk about the chapters as a whole. So 5 chapters today, which catches me up on my 4 chapters a week, because last week I thought that the interlude was going to be really long. I don't know why, but I had this weird. I feel like I heard somewhere that some of the interludes and side story stuff are quite long, but I probably was thinking of something else, because the interlude's quite short, and one of the shortest chapters, and I think that the pacing of this section of chapters that I've read was also very much in its favour, in that we had like 3 short chapters in a row, and that were all kind of actiony or emotionally satisfying. So you kind of had chapter 11, which took me quite a long time to read. That took me almost like half an hour to read, but then like the next were like 5-10 minutes. So yeah, genuinely really interesting. As I've said many times, that's probably like, is that the catchphrase for my YouTube channel? This was genuinely really interesting. So maybe it's because that's what my YouTube channel isn't. But I really enjoyed this set of chapters. Getting a whole POV chapter from Clib is like a real treat. I like Erin's POV, but it's nice to get a full chapter POV from someone else, because we get to benefit from his inbuilt knowledge of the world, and we get to see Erin through his eyes, which I think is really useful. One of the things that so the Dresden Files is one of my favourite fantasy series of all time, and you don't, because it's all from Harry's point of view, you don't really see how other people see Harry. You kind of see it sometimes in their like reactions to things he does, and you know, there is that whole book, or like short story from Murphy's point of view, but really, I think that you don't get enough of what people think of Harry, and we'll get that, you know, down the line. But currently, that's what I really loved about this final chapter. Both last time's final chapter, which was the interlude of all the other people from our world going to the fantasy world, and then this one, which is the chapter with Clib, they both really felt like they were like good stopping points, if that makes sense. Whereas I feel like, if I had stopped on like chapter 13, where they were like kind of cliffhanger goblin stuff, it wouldn't have been as satisfying at a stopping point. So yeah, chapter 15 feels like a good stopping point. And I think that if I was going to now, if someone was like, oh, I'm not sure about The Wandering Inn, I would be like, read the first 15 chapters. It won't, it's like a couple of hours of reading probably. And I think that you would know by now, because you've seen a lot of what The Wandering Inn has to offer at least. So you see, action, you see world building, you see multiple interesting characters, and you see kind of you see the leveling system quite strongly. So I think there's a lot of there's kind of a distillation of everything that I love in fantasy in these first 15 chapters, and that's what I would recommend. So I will probably, maybe when I finish book 1, I'll do a why you should read The Wandering Inn video that's non-spoiler for people who are like Wandering Inn curious, and in that I will mention 15 chapters. Everybody remind me when we finish book 1, 15 chapters is the good introduction that can take you a couple of hours and that you'll probably enjoy. Anyway, speaking of things you'll probably enjoy, if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like for me, or share it with your friends, or drop a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you more about these comments. Obviously, I don't want any spoilers because this is as far as I've read, but I'd love to chat with you about what I have currently read in the comments below. And if you're a Wandering Inn person only and you're not interested in my other videos, I'll speak to you next Thursday. And apologies for this video being probably, by the time it goes out, 5 or 6 hours late. But you probably don't notice if you're not a dedicated, watch every video at 5 PM when it uploads kind of person. And if you are not a Wandering Inn subscriber and you watch all the videos, I will see you tomorrow for the weekly wrap up. Goodbye.